Today's article is on page Reish Chaf Gimel 259. And after the main sefer is finished, he has different articles that pertain to Shabbos and themes related to it. And the first one is Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum. What is Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum? This is the obligation we have each week to read the parsha of the week twice, each pasuk twice, and then a targum. Targum, it means a translation into Aramaic. So the official way to do Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum is two psukim and then the Targum Unkelis. That is the way it's usually done. So for many years, that's all Jews would do. But then people said, okay, we could do other mafarshim, do a Rashi, do a Ramban, pick someone else. So I think you're makayim this idea with any mafarsh you choose, but that's it's called Targum because it was the Targum Onkelos. Kol Shana anu matchilim shuv matchilas Torah v'korim matchilas Parshas Bereishis. Every year we begin again Parshas Bereishis. Kamana imo margeshes hachaviyah hazu la'aschem echadash. How wonderful it is to start over again. Simchas Torah. Today, which this year was a difficult year. Hirgashnu et ze kasher siyamnu es Torah. We finished the Torah, and what happened? It chamas Chumash Bereishis, and we started Chumash Bereishis. Shabbos hazu matchilim Bereishis bar Elokim. We begin Bereishis bar Elokim. So he's giving this drasha on Parshas Bereishis. Keilu hashamayim va'aretz nivru mechadash, and the sentiment that is being expressed is if shamayim va'aretz were recreated from scratch again. Kimo hahergish shahu hanifla shiyotzim muktam b'boker bizman neitzchama. That same sentiment we get every time we go outside and we see sunrise. Shakol kol kach zohar v'naim, which is so beautiful and wondrous. Haruach hakarira ma'neget hanefesh, and the cool wind gives the soul a sense of oneg. He's talking about in Israel, and he lived in a place where it's warm. So the most enjoyable time of day is that early morning where you have that cool breeze. Hatziporim mishtagim bezemer. They're going wild with a song. Nefesh shara itam yachad. And the soul sings with them together. Kain lahaskel b'tchilas Torah kamanaim. So to begin the Torah, not just the day, is also beautiful. How wondrous is it? But practically the law is misrag shos l'chud eno yotzi davar. So from a halachic standpoint, just feeling good about yourself and feeling inspired is not a halachic accomplishment. It's not achieving much. Number one is the halacha says everyone has to finish the parsha every week, twice with one targum. There's a great app, the OU app, All Parsha. You download it. You can actually keep track of what you've read in the parsha, each aliyah, how many times you've done it, and it keeps track on the app for you. And then you can read the targum along with it also. It's OU what? It's the OU app, but it's All Parsha. All Parsha. And then they have different mafarshim and shiurim and things like that. I think it's wonderful. Okay. Lolam yashlim adam parsha sav metzibor shtayim mikvech targum. Lolam mashlim parsha sav metzibor marichim lo yom avnos. And if you do it, you'll have a long life. That's the Gemara Brachos. Ein zman tov yosel ha'ischazik l'kapel al atzmo atzmeinu la'amav al lachazu kol Shabbos v'Shabbos. So, and every Shabbos to accept this upon ourselves. This is the best time to do it. Ha'ari HaKadosh, the Arizal, ha'yagomer parsha be'erev Shabbos, v'charkach tov mikvah. He would finish the parsha Friday. He would jump in the mikvah. Taro mikvah tara. The al yidei shnei mekabel kedusha Shabbos b'shleima. That's how he would receive the kedusha, the sanctity of Shabbos. Aval lifachot ligmor da parsha b'nei sudas haboker. But at least finish it before the morning, before Shabbos. So what does it mean before sudas haboker? It means before lunch, right? Because you know sudas haboker. Unless you're a chassid, then you do eat breakfast. Shane is second law. Because Litvaks daven so they could eat, and Hasidim eat so they could daven. That's that they say. That a Litvak daven so he can eat, and a Chassid eats so he can daven. You need the energy. The Mishnah Berurah allows this if you need the energy, if you can't do it. Shainis kasher korim is a parsha shelo tehei kriyas be'alma. When you read the parsha, that it shouldn't be just a stam kriya, just not reading it. Ella lamod rega livchon perish amilos. Pause for a moment. Understand the explanation of the words. Ha'etz l'kach l'dimyan. The advice for this is Ki'ilu lo ra'iti et hamilim ha'ilim olam. To imagine as if you've never seen the words before in your life. Kilu pam rishona korim mashikosav. Bereshis bara lokim es shemayim. In the beginning, you see the pasuk. In the beginning, God created the shemayim. Kama nora hadover. How wondrous it is! Is it shemayim ha'atzumim im miliarde kochavim, millions upon millions of stars. Kol echad pi kama mikol olam. Each one is so much larger than the world. That part always blows my mind, right? That each of those little stars are larger than them. Or many of them are. Me, Bora, Kol Ela, who created this, V'chol, V'chein HaSipor, Im Adam Arishon, Adam, Eve, Noach, Abraham, Avinu, Im Mistaklim, Ki'ilu, Hayom, Nisna Torah, as if today was given Torah, what would you do? How would you reread it? What questions would you ask when you open the Parsha? I always tell people that want to learn how to darshan. There's a younger rabbi who came to the community, asked me, what do I do when I approach a Parsha for a drush? I told him, well, whether it's I read a medrash and I look for heat, I look for something that has like something to it that's different, right? And it doesn't have to scream out the message right away. Usually it's just that, wow, that's an interesting idea. That's a strange thing. And even when you read the parsha, you should be writing down questions. Well, what's strange about this situation? What was going on, right? What were the characters thinking? What was Hashem doing? And you start to ask questions as you go, like you never read it before. If you read the story of Yosef being sold by his brothers, like you read every year, nothing new is going to pop out of it. But if you read it like brand new, it's something new is happening, right? The dreams we're going to read about Paro. We're going to read about the story of coming out of prison this week. We're going to read about Yosef meeting his brothers. What are the elements in the parsha that stick out? Not because Rashi asks them. What would you ask if you saw the text for the first time? So read the parsha as if you're doing it for the first time, as if you're meeting Adam Arishon for the first time. If you look at it as if the Torah was just given. Hayom Mikol Tishmo, today. B'chol yom yu beinecha kechadashim, every day should be like it's new. How wondrous and new would the Torah be? Simchas Torah, and so is Torah when we dance. Kisharakadnu v'samchenu im haTorah, zulaisa be'emes golat akoteret, gilat akoteret shokol yamim noreim. This is the final koteret, it's the capstone event of all of the high holidays. Hayamim noraim, haykulam be'emet. Torah. This is strange reading it this year. I get it. But the Yom Noraim was a preparation for Simchas Torah. All of the preparations and all the things that you have to plan and worry about before the wedding. So that the Bnei Yisrael should rejoice with the Kala, which is the Torah or Hashem. The Jews and the Torah should be connected in one yichud. The wedding is not the purpose. You spend a lot of money on the wedding and you don't work on the marriage. It's not really helpful. To be partners. All the fanfare, the holy days of Noraim, Mitchila Matchila, it now begins. The Torah should be part of a shutaf, a partnership with our lives. So, the first thing he introduces is that the idea of Shnai Mikra Bechatargum specifically is time to calculate that at the beginning of the year, but you can jump on the wagon anytime through this, right? Any parsha, just jump on, and then you'll keep a checklist in your Chumash. Keep a checklist for Mishnayos. Do you have a Mishnayos checklist?
Yeah, put on my wall.
You have a checklist to make one for my kids. My nephew made a Siyum Mishnayos and his bar mitzvah. It's really special.
That's so nice.
I asked him if I can grill him on Zroim. He said no. I at my kids' bar mitzvah, I dragged them through Maseches Makos, each of them. I don't know if they remember anything from that.
Makos?
Yeah.
You don't do that.
Right. It was just as cruel as the Masechta itself, just dragging. But not Mishnayos, the Gemara. But like sometimes these projects, these bar mitzvah projects they're just about the father's ego. Sometimes it's really about the kid, so you have to know the child. But anyway, but you keep a checklist for the parsha. in your Chumash, and you check, okay, I learned this Parsha, Shnai Mikra Echad Targum. I learned all the Rashis. So you can make a siyum at the end of the year. We learned all the Targums. Just to read it and to ask questions, even if you're not going to understand Targum, the Aramaic, right? Targum is not just a translation; he's also an original Parish, but it's hard to detect that unless you speak Aramaic. But if you keep the checklist, I guarantee you're going to learn new things in the Parsha you've never done before.
Is he before Rush?
Yeah, yeah. He's writing in Aramaic, so talking about time of the Amoraim, Gemara time, right? Okay. Now the next piece, these are little essays, so we can do a few each week. Next one is called Zachar B'Sham V'Yira Be'ava. So Parshas Yisro, we read the Aseret Dibros, we read the Ten Commandments. Aseret Dibros, Ksuvim Pam Nosovas Be'Parshas Veschanan. It's written again in Veschanan. Twice we have the Aseret Dibros, once in Yisro, once in Veschanan, and there are subtle differences between them, as we know. Yesh kama shinuyim ben hadibros Parshas Yisro, Parshas Veschanan. Several changes. Meha mefursamim, the most famous ones. Shemehem Parshas Yisro, Ksiv Zachor Yom Shabbat Lakadsho. And in Veschanan, what does it say? Shamor, the Shabbat Yom Shabbat Lakadsho. And Chazal say Zachor Shamor v'Dibor. God spoke one thing, and two words came out. I mean, we heard two of them at the same time. Kiviyachel's God spoke both at the same time, which we can't imagine what that is. That doesn't make sense to us. But he was able to do that. So he didn't have to overlay a track over his own voice track. Parshas Chonon says Shamor, and he spoke both at the same time. Ma she'ein hapeh yechol ledaber ve'ein ha'ozen yechol lishmoa. God did what the mouth cannot do, the human mouth and the human ear cannot hear. Shenemru, but Yishnehem, they were both said b'divrei echad as once. Upela gadol shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a wondrous thing that God was able to do this, right? V'zeh ba'al amdenu, and this comes to teach us Yisod gadol b'shmiras hamitzvos, a great idea in observance of mitzvos. Zachor, hu tzivui klali. That's a general commandment. I'll call mitzvos say all positive commandments. You have to remember and know it to fulfill it. Shamor utzivoi klali al kol mitzvos lo say. Shamor is a negative commandment. Watch yourself, you shouldn't stumble. This is not just Shabbos, but also negative commandments. Usually on Shabbos, we say that Zachor is the positive commandments, right? And Shamor is the negative commandments. So what does that mean? That means that we have to have Zechira Shabbos with candle lighting and Challah and Kiddush and Menucha Shabbos, Oneg Shabbos, Kavod Shabbos. And then we have Shmira Shabbos, which is what Shmira Shabbos Kilchaza. Don't do the Lamitet Malacha. It's the negative commandments. So this is not just about Shabbos, but what he's suggesting is that it's also about all of the mitzvos in the Torah. We have positive commandments, we have negative commandments, and God was saying they're both the same, they're both part of the same fulfillment. Kiyum mitzvos hasei, noveh v'derech klal be'avas Hashem. Fulfillment of the positive commandments stems from love of God. A person loves to fulfill commandments of Hashem. Mishtadel me'od b'mitzvos aseh kigon limud Torah, tefillah, Shabbos Kodesh, kedomet. Try to do the positive commandments: studying Torah, davening, observing Shabbos, etc. Lumadzot kiyum mitzvos los aseh noveh v'derech klal me'yira. And the negative commandments come from the emotion of yira. So we have ahava, loving Hashem, and doing things, right? What do you do with people you love? You spend time together. You have fun activities, right? What about yira? Yira is what do you ask when you have to meet the Queen of England, right? You don't ask, well, what are we going to do? We go to a bowling alley. We're going to go. What's our activity, right? That you ask when you're spending time with people who are awe of it. When you spend time with someone who you have awe of, or you're supposed to demonstrate awe of, yira. So the question is, how do I conduct myself? What don't I do? First thing you want to know is what am I not supposed to wear, right? Right? What am I not supposed to? How am I not supposed to stand and speak? And what are the words you say and not say? And how do you shake a hand or this? And
you prepare yourself,
right? But that's yira. Right. It comes from mechinas yira. So he's saying, right? Kal v'chomer when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have mitzvahs of ahava. Those are the things you do. But then you have mitzvahs of yira, right? So we see that tefillah is supposed to be a joyous thing because it's not an activity of yira. But Yarei Adam es paro ma'onshim. Be fearful of the punishments of the sins that if you violate the law, if you go zela, ono, theft, misappropriation, or ono means sort of lying to someone about ripping them off in business. Ono is devarim, there's ono money. If I sell an item under the guise that it does X, Y, and Z, and it really doesn't do those things, that's ono. If I promised you one price and I give you another price, that's ono. It's a form of, right? Or ono is devarim is also
What's the word?
ona. Aleph vav nun aleph hey. There's also onos devarim. Onos devarim means to persecute a person with your words, to make fun of others, to belittle them, right? To intimidate others. Chil Shabbos, lashon hara. All these are negative comments, and it comes through yira. Shomer ha'adam shelo la'avod al halav. And if you have yira in your bones, you won't violate these things. Person has to be shomer v'zachar b'dibur echad. Person has to live a life that has both of these: life of positive of ahava and a life of yira. The noeg shv'olam, it happens to be in the world. The minhag is ahava v'yira ain't stira gemara. In most places, love and fear represent a complete opposite ends of the spectrum. They are contradictory sentiments and emotions. But efshar lehov es mish shani yare. I can't love someone I fear. Very hard to what?
Right. Just so when you fear your parents. You fear your parents, but you love them.
So let's put parents aside for one moment. That's a good example. They're the exception. I do think that outside of parents and Hashem, you can't.
Teachers? Hashem, you can't. No, he's saying outside of parents and Hashem.
Okay, teacher also goes into that category.
Right.
but that has to do with what the Gemara explains by all of those categories. But correct. So I stand corrected in those areas.
Because it's more just like, I think this rabbi
In general.
means real fear, not, I think he means like, this is an extreme, like a prison guard, you're either scared or you love, like you can't.
Yeah, it's either a false fear or false love.
Yeah, I don't know if this is such a.
It's a general principle. Generally, it's hard to love a person you fear, and it's hard to fear a person you love. Generally, that's true.
But you fear Hashem in a different way. It's not fear. It's you fear of disappointing Hashem. It's
Awe-inspiring.
Yeah, it's not fear like you would fear.
You can fear discipline from Hashem. You can fear the punishment that you might get.
Right.
So I like the word awe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
fear.
Yeah, I like translating
Yeah.
fear Hashem as fear of Hashem because that doesn't. I don't connect to that. I like when it's translated.
Yeah,
as
it's awe. I think awe gives you
Yeah.
a better.
So I always
better.
took awe to be the combination of yira and ava. Yira means fear. Yira sa'onesh. You're afraid of punishment. You're afraid of disappointing Hashem. You're afraid of doing the wrong, violating the Torah. When I say I better not, drive on Shabbos, it's not because I hold God in awe. It's because I'm afraid of God. And when I close my eyes and I sing a beautiful Zemer on Shabbos, it's not because I am in awe of Hashem, but because I love Hashem. I love Shabbos. But if you combine these two, you get awe. That's how I explain awe is the combination. But Yira is sometimes translated as awe and sometimes translated as fear.
But I don't say I shouldn't drive in. I don't drive in Shabbos because I love Hashem and Hashem asked me not to.
Okay.
Maybe also because you're afraid that you might get a sin for doing that.
But if he loves you, he won't really care, right?
Right.
So love is flexible, right?
Yeah, okay.
Right.
He'll love me anyway.
Right. So, but people who say God doesn't really care if I do this, right?
Yeah.
And what do they usually say after that?
Okay.
After all, I didn't get struck by lightning the first time I didn't put on tefillin. And I've heard this many times from people. Like that's a major theological problem for people. It's like, I don't understand. Lightning doesn't strike you. And the first time lightning doesn't strike you, it's like an eye-opening experience for many, many from birth people.
Touching the stove, it's not
Right.
hard. You're like, oh, it's okay.
Right. It's not a big deal. So Yira, I think, does translate to punishment, but again, maybe that's not the way it should. So let's take a look. I don't think any of you are wrong. I think this is all correct. This is a good conversation. But in general, it's hard to love a person you fear. Because when you have fear of someone, it creates distance and removal. Ve'ilu ava garemes l'meshicha kirva, pulls you close, brings you in, envelops you. In stiros gemuros, and those are contradictory sentiments and feelings. Ella sheshona davar kshebayim la'avodas Hashem. When you come to worship Hashem, kasher adam yarei es Hashem hahergesh hazeh atzmahu hatanug agadol v'yoser shegorem a'ava uvekirva. Interesting, when you do avodas Hashem, when you worship Hashem, it brings you to a great sense of love and closeness. Shayira eina merachekes ella adaraba mekareves. Yiras Hashem doesn't bring you away from God; it brings you closer to Hashem. That's not a normal thing that happens. It doesn't happen with your boss. It doesn't happen with the police officer who pulls you over and you're like, oh, I love that guy. I love that guy. That was awesome. Do you know how fast you're going? Oh man, come on, let me give you a hug.
Yes,
They'll arrest you.
That's what you were saying.
But
It's
that's
with-
true, Yura. If someone who stops you,
Right.
that's true. I don't have any love.
It's like what you were saying. It's when love
I have
and fear are
genuine
connected
fear.
because you know
I know,
Hashem is
right.
trying to protect me.
Genuine.
And, like when you say no to a kid, it's that we understand he's doing this to take care of us or whatever it is.
So if you reach that level, then you have that point. And I think when the Gemara says that there are three partners in the creation of man, Hashem, and what person's father and mother, the Gemara is saying is that father and mother are akin to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore you can have yira that yields ava with a parent. You can have it. You don't have to have it. You can have it. You can strive for that. And this is why, if you look at the two sets of luchos, the right side of luchos are mitzvahs between us and Hashem, commandments that are bin adam lamakom, and the left side of luchos are commandments between us and our fellow man, bin adam lachavero, like don't steal, right?
Keep it over.
But which one's on the right that shouldn't be? Kibbut Avim. Kibbut Avim belongs on the left side of luchos. Those are human beings. And some of our parents are very human, right? But it doesn't make a difference because HaKadosh Baruch Hu understood that if you reach the heightened level of goal of Kibbut Avim, you actually have Ava V'Yira infused biyachad, right? It says Kaveh Zabicha V'Simecha, and it says as Aviv Imab Tiro that you should love your mother and your father you should fear. And the Gemara points out that it's more natural to fear your father, so it puts fear of your mother first, and it's more natural to respect your mother, so it puts your father respecting first. Yeah. Okay, so we have this idea that when the two come together, which is two contradictory emotions, that's the idea of Shamar v'Zachar b'Dibur Echad. You see where he's going with this? God spoke two things at the same time. How is it possible? How does he go beyond the capacity of space and time and words to combine together? It doesn't make any sense. And we saw the voices, the Gemara said, the Pasuk says, we saw the voices on Har Sinai. You don't see voices. Right? Here it is, we saw the
Didn't it
voices.
say we could see the thunder and hear the lightning or something?
Yeah. So that idea is that we bent the reality. We also bent the reality from infusing the concepts of Av Hanira. So what does he say? Beketer Malchut Avracha Mimeka Elecha. I will run from you to you. All right, I think this is a big idea in the Hasidic Sfarim. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says, when you run, don't run away, run to. Always run to. So I will run from you to you.
Oh, that doesn't make sense.
Let's see what
You're
it
both
says.
afraid and in love with God.
Oh,
You're trapped in some sort of funny, some sort of carnival room where you leave the room, you're back in the same room again. You keep going back and out. But that's the idea, is that when we run away from God, we're running to God.
it's like the parent is chastising a child. They end up crying about it. They come back to the parent to sue them.
Kasher borchen mipachad Hashem. We run away with fear of God. Lan borchen. Where do we run to? Elav yisparach l'kirvato ula abaso. To Hashem, to embrace Him and to love Him. Achein be'inyan ha'ava kechol hameskarven. Love all those who come close. The oavim yoser v'yoser, and they love each other even more and more. Yoser kach yireim yoser, and their fear, their awe of the other person. Until the love and the fear become one. Lavin, Haim, Uvim, Mitzazain, Ros, suddenly you see a negative commandment and you love that negative commandment. You love that God gave you, say, don't separate on Shabbos, and you fall in love with that. And then all of a sudden the things that you feared are the positive commandments, the things you love are awesome to you. They're inspirational. And in fact, they create a distance and fear, right?
So the things he tells you not to do, you love them.
You end up, when you infuse these two, you end up, the lo saseh brings you closer to love Hashem more, and the aseh brings you greater yira. That's only possible if they're b'dibur echad, if they come together. Shomer v'zachar b'dibur echad. So yesh achoshvim she zehiros ma'averos v'pachad ma'onesh. These little short pieces are I think, amazing. That caution from averos and pachad and fear of punishment meviim lidei atzvanos va'atzvos, brings you to sadness and depression. Truth is the opposite. Torah mitzvahs dafka as a heroes v'ashmira v'darkei Torah, that if you are cautious and conscientious about the ways of the Torah, zehu atano gadol b'yosef, it's the greatest joy you could ever experience. K'fol she'adam mosif, and whatever you add on, the more you do, v'lif ami as a heroes ushmira v'nitosef lo chemda tano b'chayim. The more caution you take, the more joy you get in life. Zel b'diuk b'duk u'menusa. This is time tested, and this is something that's absolutely true. Sometimes people who are seeped in Torah make this mistake. They're afraid to go too much into Torah and Tefillah. They created a standoffish attitude towards Torah and Tefillah because they hold it in such awe. They kind of get stiff about it. They get mechanical about it. And those people are mistaken because they turn their love and fear of religion into like it's almost like an outsider, right? And they lose their personality in Torah. And that's a problem. The more you get closer to Motzi, who was Chaim Yafim V'Nim Yoser, the closer you get through Tefillah and Torah, the more alive you would be, the more love you'll experience. Lindu Shishnei Hayisodos Ha'ava, the two foundational ideas of love and fear, the Lev HaYehudi, they have to be one and united in the heart of a Jew, Ichud Gamor Ke'echad, a true, complete oneness as one. And that is the goal ultimately of Shomer Zachar B'Dibur Echad, and it's derived from Shabbos, of course, which makes it even more offensive.
In a sense, that's emulating Hashem, the
Yeah.
oneness of Hashem, when we can do things opposite and become one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about what you're saying.
Okay.
Right, my face trying to understand what you're saying.
No, I'm not sure if I'm making
Well,
sense.
the only thing is with the mask, I can't without seeing your full facial expression. I'm
Right.
trying to understand what you're saying,
Okay.
which is
I'm
that
coughing. I'm not taking the mask.
you should